Hi guys, thanks for joining me. I've got a very quick little tutorial for you today. We're going to be making this charming little daisy sort of plant, and the daisy set has actually been available in the shop for a little while, but I haven't had a chance to really get down and nail a tutorial for it. So this isn't going to be a how-to with the intricacies of felting in templates and everything. This is just going to be weights and measures. I am going to show you how to felt the daisy head because that is a little bit fiddly and it is a little bit tricky. Okay, so all the stuff that you're going to need for creating this particular project: the daisy template set. Then the fluff that I'm using is, this is our white, bright yellow and moss colour. Then you're going to need some wire cutters and some pliers. You're probably going to need a little bit of super glue. The wires that I'm using are a green 24 gauge 12-inch florist wire, and I've got some florist tape, which is there's two types of florist tape. The one that I use is a paper kind, and then there's one that is slightly more plastic looking, which I don't prefer. And as always, my trusty pocket scale, which I find invaluable, and you can pick these up quite cheaply on eBay. This will allow you to weigh out some very, very small amounts of wool, which when we get to creating the leaves and things is going to be invaluable. For the templates, I'm going to quickly run through weights and measures. The small daisy template head is going to take about 0.4 to 0.5 of a gram. The little circle, which we're going to do in the bright yellow, is going to take 0.1 of a gram. The small leaf shape is going to take 0.4 of a gram, and the large leaf shape is going to take 0.5 of a gram. And with the leaves, what we do is weigh out, split it in two, put the first half down, insert the wire, glue, put the top half on, felt it all together, and then we iron it. I will go through it all quickly for you, but we're going to get on, and first up we're going to make the daisy head. So I have my felting surface. I have a 40 spiral and a 38 star, and I've weighed out, this is 0.5 of a gram. The daisy uses between 0.4 and 0.5. That will get you a real nice little daisy. And all you're going to do is grab off a pinch, fold it over, just roll it in your fingers a little bit, and then we're going to put that down into one of the petals. Very, very lightly. I'm barely going through, just getting it nestled in that petal. Next one again, and I just pull it bit off, fold it in half, just roll the end ever so slightly, and just get that laid down. This is probably one of the most fiddlier templates that we do. We've done a lot of big projects lately, so I just wanted to do something small. And this is such a charming, dainty little thing, so I thought it would be ideal. So just working, getting them placed. Just make sure they stay up in the ends. If you move the template around too much, you'll kind of bring them into the center. We don't want that right now. I'm just going to work round. Lift it up. These sort of fluffy bits will overlap in the center, but you want to make sure your petals are staying to the outside as you're working round. So again, pinch, roll, and place. This is probably the most time-consuming part of this project. Pinch, roll, and place. I will show you this one in its entirety. The leaves, I'll skip through a little quicker, but they're a little more self-explanatory. Pinch, roll, place. Just check the back, make sure they're not coming out. Pinch, fold it. That's perhaps a little much. Fold, roll it a bit. A few more to do. I'm also trying to get through this quite quickly so that it's not a long drawn out tutorial. It's not behaving. There we go. Pinch, fold, roll, and place. Let's see. A couple more to do. Fold. Last one. And as you can see, I've got a little bit left over here, which I can add in should any of my petals be a little on the thin side. So now we've got all of those filled up. I'm just going to work over the center and work it out. And I'm just using the tiny tip, the first barb or two on this 40 spiral, which is a very thin needle. And then I'm going to pick it up, turn it over, and go back the other way. Center out, up all those teeny tiny petals. Turn it over. And don't be tempted to take it out of the template too soon. If it does come out, you know, you just spend the time just getting it back in. Just work over. And when you think it's finished, just go over it a couple times more Because this is so small, it does need to be really well felted. But don't be tempted to, you know, really drive the needle. See, I'm starting to come out, so I'm just going to push them back in. They're not quite yet. Not ready for you to come out yet. Just go around it a few more times. You really can only use a single needle in this template. I wouldn't be tempted to try and use a multi-tool. I think that would be quite disastrous. There we go. I can really feel it starting to firm up. So I am going to practice what I preach and just go over it a few more times. Just to make sure that when it comes out of this template, I think I've got a leaf, a petal there that's coming off. So we'll have a look at that in just a second. I'm going to take it out. Yeah, there's the one that's coming off just there. So to fix that, I'm not going to try and reattach something that's already well felted. What I'm going to do is pop this back in. And you can use the other end of your needle if you want to, you know, push things into place as well. Let's just get that down in. There we go. I'm a bit extra. I'm just going to pull myself off a new bit. Put that in where the other one broke off, and that was just a case of these fibres here hadn't overlapped the centre disc, so it hadn't joined. And then this one's going to get my focus. I'm going to put just a tiny few more fibres in on this side of that petal as well, just to make sure it's joined on both sides. Don't be coming out yet. That's what will happen if you're driving a little too hard, is you'll push them out the other side. So I'm trying to keep them in the template as much as possible. Work over that new petal. I think that we're going to be just about there. So again, I'm going to go over it a little bit more. There. So use the other end of my needle, and don't be tempted just to push in the middle. Push the petals out first very softly. And then pop the middle out. And there we have our cute little daisy. So that's sort of phase one. Like I said, it is an intricate little thing, so it takes a little bit more time. We want to get it to that point. We're going to make the yellow centre next. Super quick, 0.1 of a gram. Stuff it in the circle. Start lightly compacting it down, just getting all those fibres in. Work around the outside. And you mainly want to keep your felting around the outside because we want this to dome. So just felt lightly over until it's about the same height as the template. And then just work around the outside a little bit firmer. And I don't know if you can see, it's sort of doming it inside the template. And there's your little button of daisy centre, and that will fit quite nicely on there. Okay, so that's the centre done. So next up we're going to do a leaf. To make the leaf, you're going to measure out, this one uses about 0.5 of a gram and this one uses about 0.4 of a gram. So you weigh that out and then you split it into two. And what we're going to do is put down a first layer and then put in a wire and then put down the other half. So just going to start by spreading out my fibres a little bit. Start up in the top here. And I'm felting really lightly at the moment, just getting the fibres in the template. You want a fairly even covering, but you want to get right up into these little corners, into the little curves. Just work your way over your template, and I'm getting just a slight piercing through my surface, so that's helping just to hold these fibres in place while I move them around. Like so. Got a bit of a gap down here, so the measurements aren't exact. Gives you a good guideline, but if you need an extra pinch here and there, just add in. I'm just going to lift that up. And it looks like a horrible mess. Don't panic. I'm just going to put this back in. It will start to take shape. So getting it to the point where it's holding its shape in the template. Lift it up again, pop it back in. We'll do this a few times. Again, just tip of the needle, and I'm using my 40 spiral, very light work needle. Take it out. We're just about there. See, it's roughly holding its shape. It's going to be quite delicate because this is only half of the fibre that we need. Okay, so that's about where it needs to be. It's staying in the template reasonably well. So what I'm going to do now is add in the wire. I'm using a 24 gauge, which is it's a medium wire. I wouldn't call it thin, but it's not a power wire, it's not a supporting wire either. For something light like this, a 24 will be ideal. I'm going to double it over as well. Okay, so we've got the wiring hole at the end here. I'm going to grab our glue, and I generally prefer a glue gel to a liquid glue. But for this, I'm just going to take the 24 gauge, fold it over, and you can just very lightly twist it. It doesn't need to be a tight twist. And that one little wire will give a nice support to this leaf, and it's the same for the other leaf as well. So I'm just going to pop that in to the wiring hole and push it up so that it's near the top, but you don't want it sort of right up here. You want to give yourself a little bit of room. Grab your super glue, and we're just going to put in a few dots. So I'm going to put a dot down here, a dot in the middle, and a dot up there. And just leave that. I'm going to hold it in place. Just for a few seconds. Now I'm going to leave that for, I don't know, maybe 5-10 minutes, and then we're going to come back and put the top layer on. So my glue is mostly dry. It's got a good hold on those fibres. I'm going to grab the second half and, just as we did before, I'm going to work all over the template and bring in those new fibres on the top, and we're obviously joining them to the layer underneath. Working up the template. Lift that up a minute. And get the rest on the top. Obviously being a little careful now you've got that wire in there. Just working up into all of those sort of curves. There we go. Let's put it up. Generally check all over, see if you've got any thin spots. So we're fairly good. Pick it up, turn it over. That was my needle getting stuck in my wire. There, that's where we want to be with this. It's all now nicely felted. Holding its shape. So I'm just going to take that out of the template. So that's the big one, and the small one is exactly the same. Just work over half, insert the wire, glue, wait for the glue to dry, and then put the other half down. So for the project that we're making, you want to make 4 of the large leaf shapes and 3 of these thin leaf shapes, and then we're going to come back and start assembly. Once you've made all of your leaves, you'll have 3 of the thin ones, 4 of the larger, wider ones, and I actually put mine back into the template and sort of firmed it up a little bit more and defined the sort of shape a bit better. What we're going to do next is iron everything that you see in front of you, so everything except for the yellow centre. And the way that we're going to do that is I've got my steam iron and I've got it up on a very, very high linen setting. I've got steam up to maximum. And to iron them, to get them lovely and thin, is you're going to use pressure and a little bit of a jiggle. We don't want to be driving the iron in a direction because it can distort the fibres. So we're just going to pressure, a little bit of a jiggle, and lift. Turn it over, pressure, bit of a jiggle. And I do that a couple of times on each side. Like that. Show you again on one of the leaves, and then you can do a side by side. So pressure, bit of a jiggle, turn it over, and then you can see the difference. You got beautifully thin. Let's get the camera to focus. You can see how much thinner and smoother the surface is as well. Really does bring up leaves lovely. So I'm going to go through and iron the rest of my leaves, and then we're going to come back and start wiring up the main daisy head. Now we have our leaves and our head ironed. I'm just going to go over and just trim off the really sort of wild edges, just to neaten it up. Not cutting into the actual leaf itself, just taking off those really stray hairy bits. It just neatens the whole thing up. There we go. So you get some really nice smooth edges. So we're going to go through and do that for all of the leaves. Also going to do it for this little daisy head too. The original daisies that I did weren't ironed, and so they were quite chunky, but the ironing has been just an absolute godsend. It just makes these things so thin, smooths over the surface. So I'm just going to work around. I'm doing this very, very roughly and very quickly. I will go back over it off of camera, but you get the idea. So we're just taking off the absolute wild bits. So once you've trimmed them up and you're happy with your end result, then we're going to put some wires in. So you're probably going to need an awl or something that you can poke a couple of sort of very small clean holes with. I'm going to go off camera for a few minutes and just trim up the rest of these leaves. I've got everything trimmed up, and now grab another 24 gauge wire. I'm just going to fold it in half, like so. Make 2 holes. You want them fairly close together, but in the middle. And then we're going to grab our wire. Poke that through the first hole, and that one through the second, and feed it all the way down to the bottom. And go to the back. You want to pinch that quite firmly. And then we're going to give it a little bit of a twist. A tight twist at the top, and then you can just loosely twist the rest of it together. And there we've got a little daisy head all wired up. There we go. So now we're going to add on the centre, and to do that pop your way around, hold it down, and you're literally just going to catch the edge. So you're joining the very, very edge of this, and I'm going in at probably about a 45-degree angle. You could perhaps dot some glue on the back of this if you wanted to. but I don't think it will need it. So we just go in, take your time, just working around that circle. Find where your needle will go through. There we go. See, we've got some tufts coming out the back. That's fine, we want that. There's our little daisy. And if your daisy centre is still a little bulbous, just go over it a little bit. Flatten it down ever so slightly. That's a little better. So now we've got our head attached to our wire. We're going to add some green on the back and to the stem. You've got a couple of options for wrapping your stem. Grab some of your green. This is the moss colour, same as we used in the leaves. Let's see if I can film this, hold it in the right place. So I'm just making a long piece. And what I'm going to do is just wrap it around, just wrap it over itself again and again. Keep the daisy out of the way. It's being ever so fiddly. So just wrap it around and around and around until you start getting a lump, and then just push that all the way up to the top. Hold your daisy, and then we're just going to attach this green to the very, very centre and turn it around. And you want to keep this inside of that yellow circle because we don't want it coming out the front. But we just want to attach some green using the first barb on my needle. And if you notice now, we've got this sort of little cone shape going on the back, and that just creates a nice sort of bridge from the daisy. Just bring in all of these stray fibres. Like so. I hope that came out on camera okay. Just going to work this down just a tiny little bit more, make sure it's really well felted. And to cover the stem, you've got a couple of options. You can florist tape it with some florist tape, which I can never find when I need it. Here we go. So there's some florist tape, and this stuff sticks to itself, but it's not sticky. But it does need to be activated. And the way that you do that is you hold and you pull to get that kind of noise. And then hold the tape, bring it round and lock it on itself. And once it's locked on itself, it's pretty much sticky, so you can roll it down your daisy wire and you'll end up with a very nice stem. Roll it all the way down to the end and then break it off. I'm actually not going to do that. I'm going to wool and wax my stem. I absolutely love waxing the stems on the various flowers and things that we do. Just think it really just looks lovely. So I've got my felter's wax in natural, and that's melting. And what I'm going to do is just make myself a piece of wool. These are short fibres, and long fibres or longer fibres are generally better for wrapping, I find. But by just tacking some of this together in a line, we've got enough to wrap with. So I'm just overhanging a bit of the fluff around the top, just a small amount that I'm going to felt into that green cone. And much like the florist tape, I'm just bringing the wool around, locking it on itself. And then as you wrap, you hold the wool flat. So don't hold the wool and wind it round because it will twist. Just wrap, keeping the wool nice and flat, downward angle, and you can end up with a lovely thin wool covered stem. Like so. Just going to wrap it down to the end. My stem's not going to be this long, but so I'm going to pay a little bit of attention to up here, just using that cone at the top, bring in all these stray fibres. There we go. Nice thin wool wrapped stem. You can see it's very hairy and fibrous at the moment, and that's why I just like to touch it with a tiny bit of wax. Seals everything in. And what I will do is I'll start waxing from here downwards, and then I'll come back and I'll just take the wax up ever so slightly into that cone shape. And then that will give us a nice blend between the wool and the wax stem. So I've got my felter's wax melting over here, and I really just need a dab of it. So this isn't completely melted yet, but that's fine. I just need a touch of it. And you probably want to get yourself something like a thin coffee stirrer stick or lolly stick, something like that. Something just to grab a little bit of the wax from here and dot it onto there. I, however, use my finger, which is probably really bad, but you can obviously use your finger if you wish. I don't advise it. This is hot, so right, it's the tiniest touch, and then I just pinch and roll, and it just applies the thinnest amount of wax. You may not feel that it's worth breaking out the wax melter for just such a small little thing, but I do feel that the wax stems look lovely. So I've worked my way down my stem, and the whole plant isn't going to be very tall. So I have the tiniest bit of wax on my finger. And then I'm just going to go back up to that cone shape and just put a little dot of it up there and pinch and roll. Don't worry about all of these white bits. It's because I've actually got more on my hand than I need on the project, but once I've got it off of my hand heat, just a roll, and it will disperse the wax that's on the stem. And there you can see that's brought it right in to a beautifully smooth stem, and there's no sort of colour difference. So there we go, little wax stem, took no time at all. So now what we're going to do is add the leaves and finish off the project. Here's the daisy, and we've got our leaves. The way to layer these leaves up is the 4 larger ones go underneath, and then the 3 thinner ones kind of come over the top. I'm going to start with the 3 and decide how sort of tall you want your daisy, so how much you want there to be stalk there, and then pop your leaf at about that point, and then just wrap those wires down. Like so. And then from that point, these other 2 kind of go round in thirds. I'm just going to wrap it round. There. So we've got one that way, so the third one will come off this way. So I'm going to hold that one in place. Wrap it down the stem. And there we've got our first layer of leaves. I'm just going to pop my mat out of the way a second and bring in this piece of paper. It will give me a little more room, and you'll still be able to see the leaves better because they're green on the green background. It doesn't work so well with the larger leaves. You've got an orientation, so I'm going to have a couple facing one way and a couple facing the other, and these are going to go on the quarters. So just pop one on, and you want to give yourself just a little bit of a gap between the top layer and this layer. And then the next one will go right next to it. So hold it down, wrap the wire, and then the next one. And what I'm doing to place these is bending a 90° right at that bottom. And then this next one will go right next to the other one. And then the fourth one I think my overhead camera is having a bit of a focusing fit at the moment, so I do apologise for that. So the fourth one's going there. And that sort of unevenness of the number of leaves not being completely symmetrical just adds to the sort of endearing aesthetic. So once you've got all of your leaves in situ, then just use your fingers and curl them over ever so slightly. You can see, so obviously if you're looking at it, that's effectively sort of ground level. Now I've got a log slice. This is one of the ones that we use for the mannequins. So it's got a 9mm hole already drilled in it. Obviously this is a little thin for that, but what I'm going to do is grab my wire cutters and just to start with, I'm just going to chop off and reduce that down. The depth of that hole is about yay. So I'm going to grab my pliers and I'm going to turn back that to make a U shape, and that should wedge quite nicely in the little hole. Then we get arranging of the little daisy. There we go. How about that? Very quaint, pretty little daisy. So what I'm going to show you now is a very, very quick little tip for getting those beautiful veins on the leaves. You can spend obviously as long as you want, you know, getting the leaves with shading using different coloured felts, but I wish I had that sort of time. But I have found Sharpie, and I had a bit of a oh my god moment when I realised that I could do this, and it just adds just enough depth to the leaf to really make it sort of pop. And what I'm going to do is, you don't use the tip of the the Sharpie, you use sort of the flat side. If you use the tip, you'll just sort of scratch your surface and it will lift all those fibres. But you start by just drawing a centre line and then very lightly just adding in those veins, and I hope it's coming out okay on camera. I'm going to pull that one out the way. And I always add these veins on at the end because you don't always know which orientation your leaf is going to be. You could draw them on both sides of the leaf, I guess, but I'm just going to quickly go over all of these leaves and just put in the slightest kind of hint of these veins. And this is just a standard green Sharpie that I got in a pack of 4. And even up close, you know, this looks, yeah, it looks like it's supposed to be there. It doesn't look like something you've just added on. Just really light with those veins. And don't draw them right out to the very, very edges. Just keep them in the middle. There we go, almost done. Last one. There. And as you can hopefully see on camera, that's really brought some dimension to that little cluster. So there we have it. There's the daisy, the dainty daisy. A nice little small project in contrast to the ones that we've been making recently. Well, thank you very much for joining me. I hope you enjoyed it, and I wish you all a very crafty day.